And we see a third challenge is that agile teams or teams that are working on customer experience, they need to prioritize, but for them it's really hard to choose where to work on, where to start, in which channel, which segment or persona, or in which journey they need to start.
Welcome everyone. I am Ricardo Gulco, the co-founder of the ECXO. Today we are reunited here for a very special session, the European Customer Experience. These sessions, okay, I hope you can see. We all have to be equipped with a T, okay, because that's the purpose. We have a very special guest today, Danny Peters. Danny Peters is the guy to go to here in Europe when you want to connect data and journeys. He knows everything about that. And a few years ago, how many years? 7 years ago, 10 years ago, he founded a company that calls Milkymap, all right? And this company really works only with B2B and is helping the largest companies around Europe, around Holland, where he resides, to really improve their journeys using the right data, the right approach, not 100 journeys, but few journeys that works connected with data. So this is Danny Peters in a nutshell. The European Customer Experience Organization is free for all members right now, okay? And we would like to invite you to come on board until the end of the year, because all new members from next year forward will have to pay a fee. So we invite you as we are free on board. To illustrate a bit more, to explain how we are going to manage that, Joanna will explain how we are going to manage the Q&A, and then I'm going to give the word to Danny, and he is going to go forward without me. Joanna.
Okay, good morning everybody, or good afternoon, depending of course where you're coming from. Joanna heter jeg. That was suddenly Norwegian. We will have a Q&A today with Danny, and that means that you can post your questions in the chat, and I will make sure that we'll forward these to Danny. Now, Danny has said that he's open for us to actually ask him these questions during his presentation. So that means that I will actually, if you write in your question, I can ask it almost immediately. So we'll see how that works, everybody. Enjoy the session.
And without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Danny Peters. Danny, the show is yours. I'm going to disappear in 1 second.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ricardo. And thank you very much, Joanna, for the introduction and for the nice words. Hi everybody, welcome to this webinar. Also from my side, thank you for joining and thank you for taking the time to come here, and I'm going to share as much knowledge and experience as I have in this coming hour to share with you our experience and our methodologies for indeed connecting your journeys to a framework and to be able to manage your multiple customer journeys in your organization. I'm going to share my screen, so I have a couple of slides that I prepared to visualize more. Yes. And as I discussed with Joanna, please feel free to ask your questions in the chat. Joanna will take care of that and will interrupt me during my presentation if you have any questions regarding the subject that I'm talking about. And it's also possible at the end of the presentation, we have plenty of room to also answer your questions that you have. So you can also write them down and keep them for the end of the presentation. Okay, so again, my name is Danny Peters. I am the co-founder of Milkymap. We started indeed 6-7 years ago with a company together with my business partner, Ulf Uyneke. We started Milkymap to help large organizations to manage their customer journeys, their multiple customer journeys within the organization, in complex organizations, trying to get a grip on the data and on the modeling of those journeys. And I have a contact center background. I started in 1998 working in large organizations to improve customer processes. And throughout the years, that customer service became customer experience. And 10-11 years ago, we started with building methodologies and structures, helping organizations to manage that experience. So that's what we started 10-11 years ago, and what we saw that there was a huge need for organizations to digitize their journeys in one environment where they can collaborate and look for improvement ideas and really work on the journeys on a daily basis. And that's why we started with Milkymap, a SaaS platform for B2B, for organizations to manage and collaborate for the journeys. And we do that with 10 people now. We are based in 2 countries, in Netherlands and in India. We work in over more than 130 countries. Our platform is used. We have more than 10,000 accounts. So with Milkymap, we really try to have impact and to be scalable around the world and to help organizations themselves to be scalable within their teams and within their organization. And last year, I also joined as an ambassador to ECXO. I'm really proud to be part of this community. I'm really proud to share knowledge, but also to put my challenges and the challenges that we have also in the community where we help each other, raising the bar for CX. So happy together with Steve Belgraver in the Netherlands, we are part of this community and ambassadors of the ECXO. And thank you, Ricardo, for inviting me to do this session today. Okay. I always start with a metaphor, because if you're looking at building a model around your journeys, around your customer journeys, and what it is and how it works, I'll come back to that, of course, later in this webinar. But I wanted to show you this amazing spectre, amazing piece of art by these birds. These are starlings, and they can create these amazing, nice-looking pieces of art in the air. And I use it as a metaphor of what we're doing with our lifecycle model to help complex organizations look at the world for a more simple, in a more simple way. And the biologists are not really clear about what these birds are doing here. They can be flexible and moving around predators, so they are safe. The second reason that they do this can be to capture flies in the air, just to have food, be predator themselves. And the third reason could be that they do it just for fun, creating these nice spectre. There are 3 simple rules behind this way of moving by these birds. And these 3 simple rules are just so simple that for me that was really a nice subject, a nice way of looking at how they do that and how we work with our model. These birds, when doing this, have the same speed. That's rule number 1. Rule number 2 is that they have the same distance between each other. And rule number 3 is that they fly in the same direction. So those 3 simple rules, if you have those and that definitions are correct and lived by, then you can create this kind of flexibility and these kind of things in the air. I think it's a really nice way of looking at how, as an organization, you can make the world of customer experience management and how you try to grab and to manage all the data and all the journeys and all the experiences from all your customers into one simple way. You need to create simple rules to be able to capture that and to manage it. What we saw in the last years in organizations is that the challenges that they're facing if they manage CX and try to reach their business goals is that we see that organizations have a lot of challenges with going from inside out to outside in. to look at things and making choices in the organization really from an outside-in perspective. Step in the customer's shoes and choosing and changing organization from a customer perspective. That's really a challenge. The second one is that we see that organizations have more and more customer journeys. So customer journey mapping is a success, and that's good because then we're creating more visualizations and more understanding of the customer. But with having so much customer journeys on different levels, in different departments, in different systems, in different ways of mapping them out, it's also getting harder to control them and to manage them. The third challenge that we see is that the data that is in these journeys is fragmented. We see that there are different systems where data is stored or reported or dashboarding is created. We see that that data definitions are really hard to capture from a CX perspective to get those definitions and get the right data. So the data fragmentation is really a huge challenge. And we see a third challenge is that agile teams or teams that are working on customer experience, they need to prioritize, but for them it's really hard to choose where to work on, where to start, in which channel, which segment or persona, or in which journey they need to start. So from that challenges...
Danny, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Oh, now you have a text because you did not have text in the...
Correct. I'm coming with this text. This was the intro. Thank you, Ricardo, for...
Right.
Yeah, no problem. So imagine with these challenges in mind, that as a CX professional, you can have a holistic view of the complete life cycle of your customers with all the connected customer journeys in your organization, where you know also the performance of that life cycle. And you can prioritize and feed those teams with improvement ideas. And it gives you a data modeling, and that data modeling you can use for multiple applications to improve CX as a whole in the context of your complete organization, and to operate more and more from an outside-in perspective. Well, imagine that that's possible. And what we tried to do and what we built is a model that helps to reach these goals and to get the things done that you see in this screen. Again, if you have questions or notes, if you want to say something, please let us know in the chat, and Joanna will interrupt me and pass it on to me if necessary. Before we go to the model itself, the lifecycle model structure, how we created that and what it is, I would like to take you on this maturity level, this building blocks in the maturity level of data-driven journey management. A lot of organizations, actually every organization, is starting first with journey mapping. There's one person or one team that does a project and is doing journey mapping. They visualize the journey, they do that in a period of time, it's finished, it's visualized, sometimes it's printed and hang on the wall, and then we can work with that customer journey. And then we go to the next journey and map that, and then we learn from it, and then we go to the next journey. So that is the first stage of starting with journey mapping. But if you have multiple journey maps, and you want to measure them, and you want to compare them, and you want to improve them, it is important to do journey management. There need to be owners of a map. There need to be measurement. You need to improve a journey. You change the journey and then you measure it again. So then you're coming into that building block of customer journey management. It's a continuous way of improving journeys. But still those journeys are separate journeys, measured separately and managed separately. But with owners and improving those journeys from current to future state. And in that case, you can improve the CX within your organization. But if you have multiple journeys that you're managing and you have multiple owners in multiple teams, it's getting harder and harder to get that together into one place. And that's why we created the CX lifecycle model. It is a framework, a model that is above the journeys. So it's not an end-to-end journey, but it's a model that is above the journeys that helps to connect those journeys with each other. And looking from a more holistic view on the complete life cycle of all your customers. I'm coming into the definitions and the way we set it up, of course, in the next slide. So if you did that, you have that framework and you have the model above your journey, so you can connect them and you have one overview of all your journeys connected to that complete life cycle. you can add data to it. And if you add data to that lifecycle model and to your journeys, you can steer and you can see the performance, and you can really create a CX action board where you can go from performance, from analytics into action, and find the right person in your organization that is responsible for that specific journey that you want to improve. Because then it becomes actionable if you're adding data to this model. Okay. So that is the maturity that we see, and that we also help organizations with, going from mapping to management, from management to modeling, and from modeling into the data and the steering on the performance of the life cycle and the journeys. So what is the life cycle model? The life cycle model is a structure of 3 layers. I'm going to take you through those layers. And this structure is built once and stays the same for years. So it's necessary that this model is a one-time correct effort where you capture all the reasons why customers have contact with the organization, grouped in stages. So the highest level of this model, as you see in the circle in the middle, is I become a customer, I am a new customer, I am a customer, I stay as a customer, and I leave as a customer. All customers go through all those stages. Every customer is not a customer in the beginning, and every customer will also leave eventually the organization, or by going to competition, or when they die, or move to another country, etc. So this highest level, this is the highest level of the model, is a simple visualization and structure of not being a customer, becoming a customer, being a customer, staying and leaving. We have a couple of industry standards. So this one is an example for a telco. In other branches or sectors, this setup and this structure can be a little bit different. Yes.
I'm sorry to bother you again. Could you make this picture a bit bigger, because it's very difficult to read what is written here?
Yeah, thank you.
Nobody could read, so they mentioned here, and I also cannot read.
Okay, yeah. I hope this is better.
Yeah, and I think the question actually, Danny, was could we actually get hold of this afterwards in a, for example, a PDF or a larger visual model? Yeah.
I will share all the slides that you see now on the screen. This presentation, it is recorded, but I will also share the handout with all the, slides in.
And you post in ECXO.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. It's one of our rules to share the knowledge that we are presenting. Okay, so here's the zoom in of the model, where you have some examples of the other 2 layers. So the highest level is the lifecycle stage. I am a customer. Then we have the second layer, where we see in this example insights, invoicing, advice and service, etc. Those are the phases. It's a grouping of a couple of contact reasons. So the third level of the model, we call them contact reasons, the reasons why the customer are interacting with the brand or the product and service. So these contact reasons, these interaction reasons, they start with I and then an active verb and then a subject. So this setup of these contact reasons are all the reasons in the complete life cycle why customers are touching, interacting with the organization. There are no channels in here, there's no product, no brand, no segment, etc. It is just the reason that the customer is interacting. So if we have this overview, and for some of you who are familiar with CRM and case logging in customer contact environments, you can compare this with the logging that you do. So you log your customer contacts for a certain subject. And what we did here is that we put that into one model, grouped by phases and then grouped into life cycle stages. So with this structure, we already have a nice and complete overview of everything that is happening in the life of a customer. We have some design principles behind this model. We will also share that in the ebook that we wrote that says no less than 60 contact reasons, no more than 80. So it's the granularity of the model is really important, that it stays relevant, it stays interesting enough to add data to it, and it has the right level of the model. There's no bucket other. It's forbidden to have a bucket with other contact reason. Because if you put an other in this model, that will be filled, of course, with all kinds of data, and then you will lose the meaning of the model, and it becomes really hard, because then you need to analyze that reason with other, and then you need to structure it again, etc. So there's no other included. Another design principle is that over the years, if people want to add something to the model, another contact reason needs to go out. That is not used, there's not enough data, it's not relevant anymore, not relevant in that moment, and then you can add another contact reason. Okay, so this is the basic introduction of how the setup of the model is and how we structure that. And now we, in the methodology that we now did a connection on the lowest level of the lifecycle model, so the contact reasons, and we do that on journey level. So that's where we connect those with each other. And let me give an example here. For the people who know journey mapping can recognize this. For the people who are not familiar with journey mapping itself, I will explain this structure that you see here in the journey. The journey name is I buy a new iPhone. So for this telco, they mapped out the journey of buying a new iPhone. The episodes are the episodes that are happening in the journey. And one of the episodes could be I set up my product. If I buy the iPhone, I set up the product. And then I have the touch points. I visit the store to set up my product for the first time, or I log in to install my product, and I log in with my existing Apple ID, and also to register the new phone, etc. So here we see a couple of contact reasons in those touch points. Setting it up for the first time, or installing it to change my phone. And in our lifecycle model, those are two contact reasons that we have in the model. So here, from the touch point level in the journey, so this is the lowest level in the journey, we connect those touch points on a higher level to the lifecycle model. Please let me know if I didn't explain that well enough. I always need to ask it, did I explain it well enough? So please let me know. So here we have the methodology that we connect all those journeys in the organization on the lowest level, on those interaction moments, on those touch points, to the lifecycle model. And what you can then do is that if you have this model in the center, you see the journeys around it, and you see how the journeys and where the journeys are connected to this model. So this is the structure that we have set up, how to connect those journeys and to have understanding of those journeys. And so, for instance, here you see on the right down corner, I move to another house, and it's touching with a couple of touch points here. I receive and pay my monthly invoice. Here under you cannot read it, I understand. Here it says I change my contract. So if you move houses, for instance, for insurance, then you change the contract. So there are also a couple of touch points there in this journey. And in this way, you can see how they are connected. So from our platform point of view, I'm not going to show our platform, it's not relevant in this webinar, of course, but I wanted to show you one screenshot that is from our platform, because there you see also the lifecycle model, as you see on the left side of the screen. There you see the green colored elements are related to one of these journeys. So for instance, I buy a new iPhone is related to these contact reasons you see on the right. So in this case, you see which journeys are connected in which place in the lifecycle model. Okay, so that's a lot of theory about how we set it up and how the structure is and how we do the modeling. Now the practice. What can you do with this? I put one example of a dashboard that you can create based on the story I just told you and the modeling that you do. Here you see on the top of the screen, I signed the contract, one of the contact reasons from the model. You see on the right side, the taxonomy of the model. I become a customer, I am a new customer, I am a customer, etc. So on the right side, we see all the elements from the lifecycle model you just saw in the circle. From a tactical and a strategical level, I want to know from signing a contract, which journeys are connecting to signing a contract. And then on the left side, I see that there are 4 journeys in our organization that have signing a contract in them. Becoming a new customer, buying the newest iPhone, I sign up for all-in-one at home, and becoming a reseller, a B2B journey. And these are B2C. I see the performance. So if you measure the journey, you see the performance of the journey. If you measure signing the contract, you see the performance of the contact region and the phases on the right side. Depending on which level you have your measurement and your data set up in your organization. I see the channel usage, so I can also see how many visits or how many interactions there are per channel. And now from this overview, I can choose or start a discussion with my peers or my stakeholders to go to one or more of these owners to get to the right journey. And then to have the conversation, what is happening in that journey, do some more research, set up different measurement, etc. So what to do with this journey is the journey management. That's not part of this webinar. So I said earlier, you have the journey management part, and that's what's happening. Of course, if I do this analysis and I have it structured in this way, I can really find all those journeys and then going into the organization and starting to improve, starting to go to those teams that can improve those journeys. Okay, so this is the practical part, the dashboarding part that you can do when you have this set up and you have the measurement in place and you have connected the data to your journeys and to your lifecycle model. I also want to show a little bit practical how this works. So how to get started if you want to set up a model like this, a framework above all your journeys, that I explain a little bit the steps that we take to build this. So we have two parts. First of all, we build the model, and second of all, and second part is that we implement the model. So building the model contains 5 steps. First of all, you scope what will be included in the model. Then you do a workshop with a multidisciplinary team and customers involved to get all the stages, phases, and contact regions mapped out. Then you build the first version. And then the third step is to validate with contact center personnel, to validate with your data, with your dashboarding, etc. And to validate, of course, with the relevant people that are responsible for the journeys. To validate if the model is correct. Then with all that output and all the feedback that came from that validation sessions, you do workshop 2. And then build the final version, the second version, and visualize it, and then you can deliver it to the organization. So then the modeling is done. But what we see is only the modeling is just the modeling. You also need to start using it. One of them is connected to the journeys, and the other ones, I will come back to that also later, in the applications you have with this modeling next to connecting it to your journeys, you can implement it and start using it. And what we do in the first period is that these 5 steps in the implementation part is that you collect the data. So you have the model, and then you say, I'm going to collect a certain type of data, for instance, NPS, or for instance, number of complaints, or the revenue. You collect data that is related to the CX. You add it manually to the model. And the advice is to do that manually in this implementation part and not going to involve any IT projects, because that will take you too much time, is our experience. So add it manually to the model, then visualize it, create a heat map like you just saw with the colors, visualize it, the insights that you have from that data that you add to the model. Then build your business case and saying, okay, now we know this, now we do the analytics, now we know what we can do, and this is the outcome that we have with this information, with this analytics. And then you can really build your business case to further implement it and to automate this modeling. I see that there are some...
Yeah, Danny, I've got a couple of questions here.
Yes.
There was one question actually. Would it also be possible that as you actually record the interactions, that you could also record the costs that are produced due to malfunctioning, basically, of the processes today?
Yeah, so thank you for the question. So costs is also one of the parameters that would be really interesting, and it is really interesting to add to the model, because then you can combine costs with or revenue or experience, etc. it's depending on how you structure and how you have organized your costs reporting. So if you have costs per journey, that is the ideal way, because then you have on the lowest level in every journey, you know how much every interaction or every channel or that journey, how much that costs for your organization. If you don't have that, you can do it on a higher level and saying it on contact region level. That's why I showed this picture again, and doing the costs on the lifecycle model. So on contact region level, if you have that information, of course. So that is also something that you need, that we help organization with, to translate this data model into the data, the parameter that you have, for instance, costs.
Okay.
So if you have it and it's if you have it, you can connect it. Right? So, but the question is, do you have the intelligence in your reporting system where you report your costs to know where that cost fits in this model or in the journey, and then you can connect it and then you can report it. Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. We actually got another question here as well. Just to see whether I've understood this question. Could this also be built or extrapolated to in-store contacts? Are the companies using your software also opening cases as the stores, e.g. retailers?
Yes.
I'm not quite,
Yeah, sorry.
I'm not quite sure I understood if I actually said the question correctly, if that was as meant. Did you understand the question, Danny? You probably did.
I think it's a channel related question. If you, I'm referring to call center and website visits, but of course there are also offline contacts. So if a customer visits a store and you log that interaction, that the customer visited the store in any way, then you can indeed connect that visit into this model. But then you need to, of course, you need to find out if the customer is visiting a clothing store. It's a little bit hard if they are there for the first time and buying the product for the first time, or they're changing a product, etc. So you need to ask them, or you need to log it in the system. If, for instance, in a telco, you're going into a store to fix your phone, and the employee is putting in the system a repair case, and that is logged, of course, in repairing the phone. That's also in the model. So yes, in store is definitely in scope of the modeling and how to use it.
Okay, brilliant. A few more questions. How well is the model working for business to business environment? I think we actually mentioned from the start that this is a model preliminarily used for business to business.
No.
Or
sorry,
no? Is that? Yeah.
No, sorry to interrupt you. No, we work in B2B, so we work with organizations, but this model is both for B2B and B2C. Okay. So we have several implementations where we have one model for both segments, for B2B and B2C. It is in one model. So that's even more beautiful, because then you can report and compare between those two segments, B2B and B2C. For a large bank, we did even private, corporate, and retail, 3 segments into one model. And then you get those 3 segments, or B2B and B2C, in one room and let them discuss how they can learn and help each other with the journeys that are underlying in this model. So no, it's definitely for B2B and for B2C.
That's brilliant news. I think there's a lot of companies that would celebrate that news, Danny. Another question, how do you collect the right data and connect it with the journey, and which questions we are looking for to obtain the right data? That's a great question.
Yeah, so there are of course several parameters, and I didn't want to map out all those different data parameters that you can have in a journey. But let's start with the KPI, the metrics, the CX metrics that you have, like CSAT or NPS or effort scores. So those, that measurement that you do out there with customers, what we do is to in that measurement, to say from each questionnaire that is sent out there, we know to which touch point that belongs, in which journey. And if you know that, you know to which contact region it belongs, and then you can build it up and put it in the model. And so CX metrics is one of them. But what we also said is earlier, and the question was also earlier about costs or revenue or number of complaints or visits to websites, etc., that you have so much different types of data that you're connecting into the model. And like I said, in the ideal way, you know it per journey, and you put it in the journey, the measurement and the data collection, and from there you can build it up until up to the framework. Some organizations that we work with don't have that. They don't have all the journeys mapped out and measured, so they do it on lifecycle level. So they do it in the lifecycle like you see here, and from there you can drill down to the journeys and do the analysis there.
Wonderful. Another couple of questions here, Danny. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's okay. No problem.
Maria, thanks for that you're sharing this model with us today. She wonders, when the model gets implemented, do you see any interdependencies or synergies with CRM e-commerce? And adding to that, what are the key success factors for reaching these synergies as you see it?
Yeah, so we always try really hard, and most of the times we succeed. That in the really early stage, you want to have this structure one-on-one, so 100% into your CRM logging. So the call center agents, the customer-facing employees, let me put it that way, so also offline, also in the stores, they map all their contacts on this model. So they choose for every contact they have, or automate it if you have text analysis software, etc., to map it on these contact regions. So yeah, there's a direct connection with CRM where we implement this model into the CRM system, and we can even connect them. So in Milkymap, our platform, we have the lifecycle model, and then you update and manage it there. And then through an API, that's more of a technical element, but through an API, the CRM system grabs the contact regions from the lifecycle model in Milkymap. So that's how you can keep it alive and keep the definition exactly the same in all your environments and all your reports.
Thank you, Danny.
Okay. Any other questions that are relevant for now? I move on. Okay, I move on. Joanna,
move on.
Okay, so like I said, on my other screen I also saw a message about the business case, building the business case. I really would love to say something about that, because indeed, how to get support to implement this model, to get this model built, that's one part. But then to automate it and then to use it, and to use it not only for the journey structure. That's of course the second part. So this business case at the end, when you have the model, is meant for implementation and use it in your organization for automation. That's that's of course the next step. The first step is to have this model to connect your journeys and to gain insights in your framework of your journeys. So that's goal number one. Goal number two is to use it also for all the other applications. So with implement and building the business case is for the automation and rollout of this model inside your organization. Yes, I agree that upfront, before you start doing this, you also need to have a business case why you want to have this model to connect your journeys to each other. Okay, please keep asking the questions. I think it's the most interactive way of answering your questions that are popping up on your side. I can go on for days, of course, but let me wrap up with one example that I want to give you. Just a brief story about the challenges that this organization was facing. This is KPN, a telco. Of course, I must say that the model that you saw earlier in this presentation is not from them, because I cannot use their model, but it's our own created model. The images that you see here, I'm allowed to share. And what we did for KPN was that they did the journey mapping and then the journey management. And then they had 150 journeys. And those journeys were large and small. and they were all on different levels. And what those journey owners did, and the CX responsible persons, they asked for data sets for every journey, with business intelligence, with marketing intelligence, with the reporting department, and with measurement, with NPS scores. So for every journey, they were doing a lot of work for asking and grabbing all that data sets. And then afterwards, they were trying to compare those journeys, but the data sets were differently set up, different definitions from different time period. So there were so many differences that there was a lot of discussion every time how to interpret all those different journeys. And then the CEO came and said, okay, I need to go to my shareholders and I need to explain how we go from NPS X to NPS Y. So how are we going to increase? And I also need to explain how we get to this NPS that we have now, because NPS was one of the corporate KPIs. And then the CX manager said, well, Danny, you came up with the methodology of journey mapping, come up with the solution for the framework for connecting those journeys and making sense of all the different layers, etc., etc. So that's where we built the framework, the lifecycle model that you see here as an image. So this is the visualization with, on the outside, you see the different journeys as a small image. And behind this is, of course, that structure of the episodes and the touch points. So here you see all the journeys, the strategically chosen journeys for that year for KPN. And in the middle, you see all the contact reasons. And those contact reasons are implemented in several environments now. For instance, in the contact center, for instance, in the web forms on the website, where you choose where the customer is choosing from these contact reasons and then will be routed to the correct department, etc. So the contact reasons are used for several ways. And here on the left side, you see the process, the validation. We need to validate, so we hang this on the wall, the first version, and then people could also in workshops put their feedback on the wall if they don't understand, or the wording was not correctly, or it was not complete, etc. So this is how we did it in an active way, creating the lifecycle model and make it perfect. And I'm really proud that they're still using the model. Of course, after all those years, it's still relevant for them to have that conversation and connect the journeys into this model. I really wanted to... Sorry, go ahead.
I have another question for you, Danny. I just need to get the question here. 1 second. What is your advice for companies that are not so used to journey mapping or starting with it, and they do 100 journey maps or a bit less to map all the interactions, which we know is not the most effective way of working? What would your advice be to bring it down to focusing on execution efficiency instead of quantity, which really doesn't add benefits to understanding the customer experience?
Yeah, so what I showed in the earlier slides of the building blocks is that, of course, you keep on managing those journeys. So mapping and managing is a thing that you need to do on a daily basis. So starting with that, and starting with journey mapping and embracing a methodology for journey mapping, you can do that without a lifecycle model. Indeed, the lifecycle model need comes later when you have multiple maps with multiple owners measured and managed on a daily basis. So then the need for a model comes to connect those together. But in that first period, just don't think about the lifecycle model and start with the journey mapping and the journey management from that side. So my advice would be to start small and to start with a couple of maps, with a couple of owners, get some training about the methodology and how you do the journey mapping. And from there, going into that, in that rhythm of managing the journeys and optimizing them. And afterwards, or in that, if you're doing that on a regular basis, then that question will come up, to connect them, to add data, to have definitions above it, etc. So that will be my advice, to start small.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you.
Okay, I have 2 more slides, and let me answer the question from Lancelot really quickly. Is there a minimum number of journey maps that would help start an organization? No, you start with 1, and sometimes it's a larger and higher level journey map of becoming a customer or being a customer. But you start with one journey, and then you take on the next and then the next. So there's not a minimum number of journeys to start with. For the lifecycle model, we see this when you have 5 maps or more, then the need comes to build some intelligence between those journeys. So that's like what we see in practice, that 5 journeys and more already give you the opportunity with the model to create some intelligence and connect them with each other. Okay. I would like to end up with some success factors in the next slide, but first of all, I want to give you a brief overview of the things that you can do with this model next to connecting them to journeys. So that's what I explained earlier. That's what we talked about. But what you can also do is that your knowledge-based taxonomy, so all your knowledge-based articles, so your frequently asked questions that you have somewhere stored, is if you build your taxonomy of your knowledge articles also in the lifecycle model, you can put all your knowledge-based articles in every contact region. So then you see how many frequently asked questions you have per contact region. If you compare that with how the performance is of this contact region, you can maybe improve with adding more frequently asked questions articles in these different contact regions. What we did for an organization is that we implemented this new structure. We added frequently asked questions in contact regions that were having no articles, and we shared it with the employees and with the customers. So the employees could browse through the lifecycle model and look for frequently asked questions, the employees talking to customers in their daily work, but we also exported it or connected it to the website where the customers themselves could browse through the lifecycle model and find the frequently asked questions on a contact region level. And we had a lot of positive feedback from the customers itself. We did some research that they were really happy with this logical structure from a customer point of view, going through this taxonomy instead of looking at processes or products, etc. That's one example. You can do your complaints reporting. It's really interesting to have the root cause of your complaints mapped on the model. So you see where complaints are starting. You can log your CRM cases. We explained that, we discussed that earlier. So all your cases logged on this model will show you how many cases there are per contact region, and then see where there are many cases. You can look into the journeys, what's happening there. You can build your website hierarchy. So you can also build your website based on your lifecycle stages. So you help your customers browse through your website based on the lifecycle model. You can plot your revenue on it to see where revenue is created in the model. You can do business process management. We have organizations that map their business processes to every contact region. So you have a map of it's like a service blueprint, but then on a higher level from this framework, and then see which processes are behind it and how we are performing on the processes combined with the performing of the journeys. And what you can also do is your IT architecture. So all your IT systems, putting them on the contact regions. And for instance, if you're changing an IT system or you're adding a new one and you connect it here, you can explain to the CX people which IT systems are implemented or changed. And then the CX responsible persons can pick up the journey owners and say, okay, they're coming a new IT system and it will touch or it will influence your journeys. And then you can have that discussion of the impact of changed IT architecture into the journeys. And of course, there are many other applications that are also mapped out in the ebook that we have. And every day we are also facing in our projects, and also customers coming to us with new applications they come up with, how to use this structure. I want to end. I have 1 more minute and then we can finish up, and Joanna also needs to finish up this webinar. I wanted to share some success factors that we see. If you start with the lifecycle model, scope as large as possible. Take everything into scope, but start small when using the model. So connecting it first to journeys, like we discussed, and then afterwards putting manually one of the applications like complaints or revenue, etc. So the scope is large, the complete organization, all brands, all segments, and all products, and then start small with using it. Prove it manually. so don't involve IT, and take your time, because this is not done overnight. You cannot build a model based from a book or based on another company. Do it, take your time, and spend really a lot of effort on getting the model right. And from there you can work with it, and it will stay the same for a long time. So that was my story. That was my experience that we have with the model. I hope you enjoyed the explanation of the model and how we use it and what you can do with it. And I would like to hand over to Joanna to finish up this webinar.
Thank you, Danny, and thank you for an absolutely wonderful presentation there, and with the really great practical examples of how we can use the life cycle model. How can people get hold of you if they want to get in touch with you, Danny?
I just showed here the slide of the information from me and how to connect with me.
Yeah, sorry.
Of course, you can always connect me through email, through the website is possible. I would love to connect on LinkedIn. I think that's my most active social media platform, where we can just connect and share experiences, and we can follow each other. So if you want to have more information, the ebook is downloadable from the website, from milkymap.com. You can look in the menu for download ebook. So that's possible. And of course, sending me an email, I will just get in touch to explain more and to see if we can help each other.
That's wonderful. Thank you. So once again, thank you, Danny, and thank you to everybody who has joined us today. A very little reminder that there's lots of things happening within the ECXO. So only tomorrow we are joined by Nigel D. Packer. That is in Michael's ECXO question time. So they will be talking about understanding the digital customer experience. So please do join us for that event. In addition to that, we are expecting a brilliant event in maybe the end of August, or perhaps even July, with Joe Pine. And if any of you have heard of Joe Pine, he is well known within the customer experience world. He is author of the book, The Customer Experience Economy. And so that we will be posting more information about that as soon as we have confirmed a date for that. Other than that, then please do tell your colleagues and friends about ECXO. Join us within the community. It's absolutely amazing to see how our community is growing and evolving over time. So thank you for your support, and we look forward to continued events and lots of things happening together in the time ahead. Other than that, we want to wish you a wonderful afternoon, or morning still, if it's morning for some of you. And we look forward to seeing you again at our next event. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you again, Danny. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.